Hey everyone, Andy here. We'll get started in just a minute. We'll wait for a few more people to join and then we can start the stream. See you in a second. All right. Hi, everyone. This is Andy from ECO. Really excited to have you here. Welcome to the community preview for tomorrow's ECO Explore event. Really excited. We've got about an hour or so of content programmed for you here. First up, we'll be talking to Joey Krug, who is the co-CIO at Pantera Capital, co-founder at Augur, and to me, most importantly, co-founder at ECO. He and I have a bunch of questions to go over. I'm just going to chat a little bit about what's going on in crypto generally and what's happening, and then we'll open it up for questions. The live event chat channel in Discord is open, so you can post things in there. Right now, Dave is grabbing all of your questions, and he will send them to me for the second half of this Q&A, and we'll go through that. And then after that, we'll let Joey sign off, and I'll give you a quick preview of what we're going to talk about tomorrow at the ECO Explore event. So with that, we'll dive in. Joey, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure thing. Got a lot of questions for you. I'm sure the Discord community does have a lot of questions for you as well. I just wanted to spend some time generally talking about crypto, what's going on in the space, and what your opinions are. But I thought it'd be really interesting, maybe just to start off for people that don't know you well or know your history. Would love to hear about the moment that got you into crypto and what got you interested, and then just briefly what your journeys looked like. A quick recap for those in the community, and then we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'd say the way I got into the space was initially back in 2011. I came across Bitcoin on this forum called overclock.net, and forum for people who had overclocked their CPUs and GPUs. And somebody had posted about mining Bitcoin with GPUs back in May of 2011. I started mining it for a while. I was only making $5 a day at the time, so eventually quit mining later in the summer. It also made your room really hot. I was in the Midwest, and it was in the mid 80s. My room was every night, and so I eventually just quit because I couldn't stand it anymore. Then I didn't really do a whole lot in the space until 2013, 2014. I was studying computer science at Pomona in Southern California, and I ended up dropping out and started Augur, built on top of Ethereum.
Amazing. Mining Bitcoin back then and quit because your room got too hot. That is one of the great regrets. We all have them. That's been a while, and for me too, that you've been spending time in crypto. What keeps you in crypto these days? Like why are you still interested, and what's keeping you going in this space?
Well, yeah, I think the original thing I got excited about, Bitcoin was this concept of money not created by a government. And that kind of leads into why I'm so into eco. I think the other aspect that interests me is that I think this tech is going to transform, finance in every sector, beyond money as well. And that's what got me excited about Ethereum. That's sort of like why I do a lot of investing in the space. I just think it's going to be the most transformative technology over the next 5 to 10 years. It feels like the last decade of crypto, which is how long I've been in it now, which seems really surprising saying it out loud, was about building all this infrastructure. And I think the next 5 to 10 years is going to be about deploying it into production with, hundreds of millions of users. And I think that's like, I'm excited for that part of it too.
Yeah, I like that analogy that we've been in development here and we're deploying into production. Is there anything, obviously outside of eco, that you're excited about on that front that you feel like is making early strides into that kind of deployment phase to a mass user base and hitting that next phase?
Well, I think I think a lot of it is DeFi stuff that primarily people within crypto are using. I do actually think like Eco is kind of the first thing that's like non-crypto geeks is the main user base, which is exciting. But if you look at within crypto, I mean, you obviously have stuff like Uniswap, or I think the other big kind of area is going to be aggregators like 1inch and Matcha. You get them an order that you want to do, a trade you want to do, and they route it across a bunch of different exchanges for you. I think that's going to get easier and easier to use. Someday you'll be able to just input your debit card and buy whatever asset you want to buy. And long run, you're probably not even going to buy crypto. You might buy a tokenized version of Tesla or something that trades 24/7. I think that's a vision that appeals to me as well.
Yeah, it is interesting on the aggregator point that in crypto, aggregators almost seem like a new concept at some level. We're like, oh, yes, I use Uniswap or I use SushiSwap, but there's also these aggregators I can use. But in traditional finance, what everyone's used to, no one trades on a single exchange. No one goes and says, oh, I'm executing this trade on NYSE or NASDAQ or any specific global exchange. It gets routed and aggregated in the right way, and liquidity is pooled in that sense. And so it's almost like we're rebuilding those primitives. We're calling them different things, but we've hit on a lot of the right ideas in traditional finance. Now we need to rebuild them for this new infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, traditional finance has a lot of parts that suck, to be blunt. And then there's some parts that were actually good ideas. And, aggregating liquidity, it's like a good idea. There's nothing like wrong with that. There's no need, in the old days, people would go to the trading floor and you'd only trade with people on that exchange, but kind of obviously, like in hindsight, made no sense. So I think that's right. There are parts of it that make sense to borrow for crypto.
Cool. I want to go back in a second to kind of your history. And Augur to me has always been such an interesting and in some sense underrated project in crypto in terms of how well its philosophy lines up with what crypto is capable of and how kind of real of an application it can be. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What do you think is underrated about Augur, or what do you think in this kind of now sea of crypto projects, which did not really exist when Augur got started? What to you makes Augur stand out as a project and differentiates it from everything else out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing probably would be, I still think, like, I honestly hold this view that, other than Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum, it's probably the most actually decentralized project out there outside of those. I mean, even if you compare it to things like Maker, which feel pretty decentralized, like there's a lot of centralized components in something like Maker. But I think if you look at something like Augur, like completely end to end, all the way from the user interface layer, all the way down the stack to the middle layer that gets data from Ethereum, and then down to an even deeper level of Ethereum itself. There's no private key or multi-sig that controls anything of it. There's no we don't host the UI, we push code to GitHub, and then it's all hosted on IPFS. And so I think that's like interesting. It's definitely made it hard to build. But I think now, actually, at this point, if you look at like the challenges Augur has, they don't actually really have to do with the technical architecture anymore. I mean, that was true like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. At this point, it's mainly just like the universe of people who like to bet doesn't necessarily overlap a lot with the universe of people who like crypto. And so the universe of people who want to bet want to be able to just onboard with a debit card. But like a true kind of like Stripe for crypto, like you just put your debit card in and everything kind of magically works, like doesn't really quite exist yet. There's solutions like Wire that are kind of partway there, but like it doesn't really quite jive with like a completely decentralized app. Like you still need kind of a business to work with Wire, which we don't have. And so like that's actually a bigger problem now as opposed to the technical architecture, which is interesting.
That's really interesting. And I think that's maybe a little bit of an underrated point there that Augur exists and is usable from a decentralized perspective. There are services out there, crypto payment processors like Wire, that allow you to send, swipe or not swipe, enter a card and buy crypto through them. But the proceeds from that transaction need to go into a bank account somewhere owned by a business, and Augur does not own a business to put a bank account into. What do you think is the solution there from a on-ramping perspective? Because if you abstract that away from Augur a little bit, that actually seems like a really fundamental primitive, that there's a decentralized product, a truly decentralized product in Augur that needs to have inflows into it. And the traditional world seems to only allow inflows into centralized businesses. So how do you bridge that gap? What does that look like in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably, I mean, there's like two ways to bridge it, one in the short term and one in the long term. I mean, I think like the short term way to bridge it is there are like some intermediaries in just a business. I think it's called like Transact that's spun up that's trying to kind of do this. But there's some, roughness around the edges of that don't make it necessarily work for Augur. I think the long term vision though is, you don't on ramp into crypto, you get crypto natively. Like it's sort of like the eco vision of, you get paid some amount in crypto or your whole paycheck eventually. And like, if you, I guess, fast forward 10 years, people will start in crypto and they may go back for some small things to the legacy financial system. They won't go legacy to crypto. Crypto will not be like this thing where you have like a side wallet with your crypto stuff and you do stuff in it. It's going to be like the internet. Like if you have print media, the only time I really read print media is when I go to the airport and I pick up a magazine and I might read it on the flight. But I'm not like, reading magazines as my primary information content. I'm reading on the internet. I think the same thing is going to be true here. So the on-ramp problem switches and eventually it'll reverse where like you may need to go back to the legacy system for some like, old traditional finance thing you may need to do once in a while. But it will be reversed as opposed to how it is today.
That's a really interesting insight. And I think so much focus gets put into explicit on-ramps when really all these trends that we're seeing, the economy is moving to the internet in all sorts of ways. And why shouldn't we just use internet native currencies from the start there for those transactions? And exactly right, no need to onboard people from fiat to crypto, just have an increasing share of their wallet be in crypto natively because they're doing more and more transactions on the internet. That's a cool insight. And then they can use Augur. It'll be easy. That's the dream. Cool. Taking a little bit of a different turn. Everyone's always, certainly my head's spinning right now on what's happening in crypto. It feels like things are flying in a million different directions. Would love to hear your takes on a few things that I feel like are happening right now. Maybe start NFTs. What's your take? What's your perspective? Where do you think that's going as a subspace?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a long-term thing. Like you think about like everything else is going digital. Why wouldn't art go digital? And then if you also think of art, like, art's been around like for a long time, but it tends to get damaged. It tends to get stolen. Art pieces get lost. If you think about having it all just be digital, and you fast forward like 1,000 years, it'll be laughable that people had physical art, I think, at some point. I'm kind of a Luddite when it comes to art. I actually do like the physical art. I like seeing it and being able to, in theory, touch it, even though you never would. But I think like that'll, history will look back on that as an outdated opinion, I think. And so I think it's here to stay. I think right now it's definitely a bit bubbly in the sense that, you have people paying really large amounts for this stuff, even when it's kind of just like created very, very rapidly. Like if you saw the Penguin stuff that was mentioned in the New York Times, those prices of those seem to have gotten out of hand pretty quickly. I think stuff like the CryptoPunk stuff, people are buying those because it's kind of the first, NFT art. And so like, even though I actually kind of think CryptoPunks look really ugly aesthetically, people are buying it. They're not buying it for that reason. So that's my view on it.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm with you on physical art. I appreciate physical art, and there's value in having it around my house. And I think part of this is actually going a totally different direction, a hardware problem that digital frames and showcasing digital art does not look as good as physical art today, even the best in class there. And we are human beings that live physically in homes and want to have things on our walls that look good. And so right now there's a bias towards physical art. I do wonder if at some point that resolves and we can have physical things that are representations of digital things that look every bit as good and, aren't tiring to look at, but we're not there yet. I agree with you. I'm with you on physical art, but I also know that my perspective will probably be run over in the long term. So it is what it is. Cool. NFTs, another quick hit. Layer one wars. Feels like a lot is happening right now. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, my take on the layer one wars is kind of, I think, there's only so much innovation you could do on a layer one. Like, I think like most of the stuff that will exist 10 years from now, it already exists like either in papers or in like MVPs today. Like you can't really, in my opinion, make something like the ETH2 design 100 times better. But like ETH2's design clearly is 100 times better than ETH1. And like, Solana's design, you could argue is 100 times better than ETH1. But I think as far as the actual layer ones today, so you have Ethereum, you have, Near, you have Cosmos, Polkadot, Solana, and a handful of others. But traction-wise, ETH is still, I would say, 90% or so of the space. There's this great website. It's called like cryptofees.info or whatever, and they show you the fees of what people are actually using, and it's 90% Ethereum, 10% Binance Smart Chain, and the rest is kind of a rounding error. And I think Ethereum is likely to stay the dominant platform. It has this huge network effect in two regards. One is the projects built on top of it all interacting with each other. And then two is solidity. The solidity network effect will be eroded over time. Like those projects are already working on making it so you can deploy solidity onto Solana. But I think the projects interacting with each other network effect is likely going to stay. And so I put the odds that ETH is the kind of dominant layer one to be pretty high. But I think there will be other layer ones that have a percentage of the market share. The analogy I always use is I don't think it's like the tech platform, like, you have one dominant platform that controls 95% of the market. I think it'll be more like world powers. Like you'll have like the US, and then you'll have, and that's probably Ethereum. And then you have a handful of others that are kind of like distant, further back, but still have a decent amount of usage.
Really interesting. What's your perspective on kind of multi-chain, cross-chain interaction and what that means, and how I'd be interested too in how individual applications you think are going to deal with that multi-chain kind of world power hegemonic world?
Yeah, so I think there's two types of cross-chain interactions. One is transferring, any type of data. So the vision is, you have an Ethereum contract and it calls in a contract on Solana, and which pings a contract on Polkadot, and then it all kind of bubbles back to you on Ethereum. And I think that's just like very impractical. I don't have a great analogy for what it's like doing it elsewhere in the software world, but there is one there somewhere, and it's not something that really makes sense to do because these systems are all peer-to-peer. They're all relatively decentralized. Latency is a real problem. You're bandwidth constrained by the speed of light. Like physics actually is a barrier here. It's not like we can find a more efficient algorithm. It's like you're literally constrained by laws of physics. And so those interactions are going to be fairly slow, even once you solve the problem as optimal as it can be solved. And so my view is what people will do is they're not going to do that. They're going to just transfer assets across the chains. So there's two types of bridges. There's like data bridges, and then there's like asset-based bridges. The asset-based ones already exist. They're already live in many cases. They seem to work decently well, and they're not perfect. They'll get better. But it's one of those like, there's a phrase in software that's like, worse is better. I think asset-based bridges are the perfect worse is better solution for cross-blockchain interactions.
Sometimes you need to live with worse is better. Yep, I think that's right. Cool. One more quick hit, something happening in the market. EIP 1559. What is your perspective on everything that's happening there?
Yeah, I think EIP 1559 is really important for Ethereum. It basically makes it much less inflationary. And then once ETH switches to proof of stake, I'd say the vast majority of blocks will actually be deflationary, which is really interesting. The big kind of hit that Bitcoin maximalists have always had against Ethereum is that its monetary policy isn't as good as Bitcoin's, which I think you have to examine things on like a multi-year horizon. If you look at Amazon stock and you say, well, in the beginning we just said, well, Amazon's not an unprofitable company, so I'm not going to buy it. And people said that, and it was like this super boneheaded thing to say. Obviously they could switch the profits on at some point and make a bunch of money. And with ETH, it's like in the beginning, the problem was about how do you solve this technical problem of doing smart contracts. Um, the solution wasn't, we want to make some massive deflationary thing. The problem was, how do we solve the tech problems, figure that out, and then we'll figure out the rest later. And like, clearly what seems to be happening is that's actually happening. And so I think the market's going to start discounting Ethereum less. And we've already kind of seen that running into in a bit after EIP 1559. I think it's going to continue, especially as proof of stake launches, which is something that like a decent percentage of the market is convinced is never going to happen. Because to be fair, everyone thought proof of stake would launch in 2016, and now it's 5 years later. But I think it is actually going to launch in the next year or so.
It's a bold prediction. Proof of stake the next year or so. I also it's a great analogy about Amazon and Ethereum, that Ethereum did not set out to build a deflationary monetary policy, hard money asset. It set out to solve a technical problem. And of course, if you manage to do that, there's a good chance that you can turn on policy that then encourages a different behavior. I have not heard that one before from the ETH Foundation. They should start using that. It's a good one. Cool. Let's see. Another one, layer 2s. So you talked about a little bit about this in the context of kind of layer 1s. What is your perspective on how that space is developing and where things are going to go there? It feels like, again, at this moment in time, there's just a ton of activity there happening on a bunch of different fronts. Where do you think that's going?
Yeah, so I think I'm a bit biased because I've invested in these, but I think my actual answer is probably right too. So I think there's 3 leading layer 2s. You have Optimism, Arbitrum, and I'd say Starkware, and they're all a little different. I'm an investor in the latter 2. I'm not an investor in Optimism, but I think the way I think about it is, you really have 2 classes of layer 2s that are kind of relevant. You have these optimistic roll-up style technology, which is pretty straightforward. It's fairly simple as far as crypto goes. I mean, it's not simple compared to regular technology, but you can get pretty decent scale improvements from it. I like Arbitrum a bit better than Optimism because it's just more efficient. It's actually more scalable. It's what Reddit chose for their scaling bake-off contest. And then if you look at Starkware, it's a very interesting approach because it's probably the way the space goes in the long term, which is you create these proofs that prove that a series of transactions happened in an honest fashion, and the proof either runs and you can verify the proof or it doesn't. It's just like if you think about a math proof, it may take a mathematician 100 years to figure out how to prove something, but then any fellow mathematician can verify the proof in a matter of minutes. And so I think that's like kind of the long-term direction, because you can get really insane scale improvements in the long run by doing things like that. I guess my last thought on layer 2s is that, people have talked about, even the Vitalik has talked about this, it's possible that Ethereum 2.0 never launches sharding. We instead just launched ETH 2.0 with the ability to post data and do kind of some minor transactions involving like sending money around. And then the rest you just punt to layer 2. So you never actually have real sharding. Everything just exists on L2, which is a possibility.
It's a really interesting, I think, underrated possibility that, if you're going to have layer 2s anyway, why not go all the way and really just put everything there and allow those layer 2s to benefit from the network effects in full, rather than competing for something that Ethereum really shouldn't be driving, but is just because of its history. Really interesting. A quick pause here for the Discord community before we pick stuff back up. We always like to say, keep your eyes peeled, and now is one of those times. So everyone who's watching this, I'd like you to go into Discord and scroll down to the very bottom of your Discord channel list. And at the bottom of the old bounties section, you'll see a channel called Eco Explore. And I want you to go in there, and I want you to post hashtag KYEP in the next 2 minutes. So we're not going to let people game this, but if you're watching this right now, very bottom of your channel list, Eco Explore in the old bounties section, go in there, post hashtag KYEP, and keep your eyes peeled. But back to the main programming. Just wanted to mention that for folks that are watching right now for a little special treat. Joey, I got one more question for you, and then we'll go to some audience questions while people go off and frantically go post in Discord here. Talk a lot about this idea of open financial systems. And you wrote this amazing post, I think it was probably 2 years ago, about open financial systems. And you talked a little bit about kind of these, which everyone should read, by the way, if you haven't yet. It's on Medium, Joey's open financial systems post. You talk a lot about these barriers to adoption, and I've got them written here. kind of nascent infrastructure, scalability, and fiat on-ramps being these big barriers to adoption for open financial systems. Two-part question. One, can you just briefly give people an idea of what you mean by open financial systems? And then two, I'd love to hear where you think we are. We talked this a little bit at the beginning, but in that trajectory of reaching open financial systems and overcoming those barriers. So what are they, and how are we doing on them as an industry?
Yeah, so I would describe open financial systems as being, a kind of parallel financial system where everything is open source, or most of it is, anyways. It's very transparent. It's kind of global from day one. You can run the transaction, any time of day, any hour. There's no banking holidays. The word I always use, the phrase I always use is if you want to send a wire, at 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve, well, crypto lets you do that. Why would you want to do that? I don't know, but it's possible, which is cool. And in the long run, it's going to be very low fees. Ethereum's fees today, it may cost you $10 to $50 to do a transaction. With layer twos, that's going to be a penny or two. So way cheaper than the legacy financial system as well. And so I would say, I think open finance is going to kind of transform all areas of finance. We've seen it start with exchanges and lending protocols, but it's going to impact insurance. It's going to impact derivatives. In the very long run, you'll see things like mortgages exist on chain because you open it up to a completely kind of global market. The more kind of boring areas of the financial system will come across too, but it started in lending and exchanges. Then I forget what was the second part of the question.
How do you think we're doing in terms of getting over the nascent infrastructure, scalability issues, fiat on-ramps? Where are we, and what's the progress? It's been a couple of years since you wrote that post.
Yeah, so nascent infrastructure, I would say, it's still pretty nascent. Like, building on Ethereum is still not easy. It's gotten easier, though. I remember, to give people some old school context, I remember when I started building on Ethereum, first off, Solidity didn't exist, and there was no support for strings of text in the programming language. So you had to kind of manually encode everything as a number. Now we have text strings. Now Solidity exists. We have try catch error statements if you're trying to catch an error and handle it. You can do that. You couldn't do that in the past. There's actually tools that exist to debug software. So it's by no means easy, but it's definitely 100 times easier than when I started. So I think we're making good progress there. On scalability, we've made a ton of progress there as well. Layer 2s exist. Things like Polygon exist. Polygon's not the most secure system out there, but things like Arbitrum and Optimism are going to have a similar user experience, but are much more secure. Starkware is already live on DYDX, and so with DYDX, and so I think scalability is being solved. There's some UI UX kinks to work out in that space, but I think over the next year they'll predominantly be fixed. And so the last area you have, which is kind of the one area that's not quite really fully solved yet, is the fiat on-ramp piece, and it's a big, messy, multifaceted problem. As we talked about earlier, there's two ways to solve it. I think people are approaching it from both angles. But it's kind of the last big hurdle to solve before I think we can really, have the space reach mass adoption.
And perhaps, as we said earlier, the answer to that is people just becoming crypto native instead of actually on-ramping. I want to emphasize, I hope people caught what you said, that when you started building on Ethereum, there were no text strings, and Solidity, the language in which we all build things on Ethereum today, not exist. That is, if we've made those sorts of advances in the last few years, then imagine what we can do in the next 5. So that is, I don't think most people know that was even a time that existed. It's like when they launched the iPhone without copy paste back in the day.
It's true. I've had people, when I talk to people about early Ethereum days, sometimes people are shocked that Solidity didn't exist. They don't believe me. I'm like look it up in GitHub. You can find the commit history when Solidity, was first created, and it was after I started building in the space, which is kind of funny.
That's amazing. Actually, before we get into audience questions, just because it is amazing to think about that. What existed before Solidity? Can you talk to people about that for just a minute? How did you build on Ethereum?
Yeah, so there were two languages. There's this one language called LLL, which stood for the most informative phrase in the world, which is completely uninformative, which is lower level language, which was almost gibberish to build in. If you've heard of Lisp, if you're not familiar with it, Google Polygram Lisp, and he'll talk about why he thinks it's so amazing. It was very similar, but for building smart contracts, pretty incomprehensible. the other language was a language called Serpent, which was sort of like Python, but it was very, very minimalist. Like you could write, functions, you pass it some data, it does something, and there was some basic storage, but you couldn't really store things in any fancy data structure. Everything was just stored in a list, if I remember right. And when I first started, there was no support for strings. But the reason why I kept building on Ethereum is I actually messaged Vitalik about the fact that there was no support for strings, and he said, well, everything's a number. You can just code it as a number if you want. I was like, yeah, but like we need strings to make this easy. And then so he came back like 2 hours later, and with all he responded with was a GitHub commit, and it had this commit where he had basically added support for strings to the language. And I was like, okay, if these guys move this fast, like this is something I want to be a part of.
That is an amazing story. That's awesome. Okay, here you go. Here's the code. I did it. I don't think it's necessary to have strings, but if you think you do, I'll make it for you. That's customer service. Amazing. So, Joe, if you have 10 or 12 more minutes, I'd love to take a few questions from the audience. We've been seeing some. For everyone, if you post in live event chat, would love to see any questions you have, especially for Joey. And we'll take some time on that, and then I'll give you a preview of what's happening tomorrow. But Joey, I got a few for you right now already from folks. Someone mentioned, we were talking about NFTs. They mentioned kind of the metaverse and everything that's happening in that mind space. And they asked about decentralized identity. What's your perspective right now on that space? Do you think there's a there? And is there anything you think is compelling in the DID space?
Yeah, it's a good question. I remember this is something we actually thought about a lot really early on with Eco, decentralized identity. And unfortunately, I do not have a great answer for you. It's like probably the hardest problem in the space, I would say, because without like a government doing anything, so identity is inherently tied to the government. Like identities outside of the government don't really exist. Like you might have like a Boy Scout ID badge or something random like that, or like you're a member of the American Legion, or some assorted club or social club that you're a member of. You might have an ID for that. But like IDs that you can actually use for things, most of them are issued by the government, and so you need to figure out some way to like bridge that gap. People have tried doing things like social identity, like where you like tie someone's identity to their friends and their social networks, and you authenticate with like a bunch of different social networks, and their friends verify that they're the person they claim they are. You can get like an ID score, and like for things that aren't like super like mission critical stuff like that actually does kind of work. But I think for like having firm knowledge that you know who the person is, it kind of involves the traditional legacy world. I'd say one interesting thing to look into, last thing I'll say on ID, is if you look into like Estonia's digital IDs, they're not decentralized, but it's in the right path. Every citizen has a physical ID card, which you can also literally plug into your computer, and it has a public-private key on it, so you can sign messages that like Andy, if he was an Estonian, he would have a public key, and I know that if he signed a message, it actually came from Andy, which is pretty cool. And I think that's the right direction long term.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think something you said there is important, which is there are many purposes for identity. Identity can matter for civil resistance. Identity can matter for, proving hard physical human identity. There's all sorts of different versions. There's probably different solutions for different pieces of the identity stack. We don't necessarily need one thing for and also kind of varying needs for certainty and identity verification. Sometimes you need 100% certainty. Sometimes, just being pretty sure someone's an individual person is enough. It's interesting. All right, another question for you from folks. Someone asked when we were talking about EIP 1559, they asked about some of the challenges with how you see more generally the challenges with gas costs for users being solved, and this kind of idea that I need to pay a fee in Ethereum being a blocker for people who are trying to use this stuff for the first time, being confused about what that means. Do you have any perspective on how that evolves over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's, for different use cases, there's different answers. So like for financial ones, long run, I think the ETH fee will just be baked into the transaction. And keep in mind, it all gets easier when you shift to a layer 2. Like if you're doing like a $50 financial transaction and somebody bakes in a 1 penny fee, nobody really cares. If you're doing a $50 transaction, somebody bakes in a $25 fee, which is kind of how it works today, the user is going to go, "What are you doing? Like, you're crazy. Like, this system is stupid," which is what a lot of real users will say if you put them in front of an Ethereum app today. And so layer 2 sticks that problem for financial ones. For non-financial use cases, you're right. You have the problem of users don't want to pay. Like if I'm doing a social media thing or voting on something in governance, I don't want to pay a penny for that, even if I have the money to do it, because it doesn't feel like an action that I should have to pay for. And so I think for things like that, one option is solve it cryptographically. There's great kind of like things like snapshot votes, even, which allow you to like sort of vote where you sign a message off chain. But still, to like an active vote, you eventually need to go on chain. Ways to solving that problem: if there's any entity involved in a protocol, they could always cover those fees, because like fees for voting for a protocol for a year, if they're all in the layer 2 and cost a penny, it might be like $100. It could be almost nothing. Another way to solve it in a decentralized fashion is to have like a lot of DAOs have treasuries. There's no reason the treasury couldn't compensate some of the users for transactions that they've done for voting. You need to make sure you have ways to prevent like people Sybil attacking the fee system to basically siphon all the fee money out. But I think having kind of like economic disincentives for that are a way to solve it. Like if you can't profit from it, that's a great first step. And then like you have ways to kind of prove like, was somebody actually doing a valid vote, or were they just spamming the system? Like there's things you can do. And you can also make it, on a discretionary basis. Like, you could have it be like, you need to have a track record of voting for 3 months before you can, file for fee reimbursement. I don't know. There's ways to kind of get at that.
I think that's a really interesting one. If people have a track record of voting, then the DAO will reimburse them for fees. It almost reminds me of kind of the Yam saga last year, where people who participated in the kind of the Yam saving vote, if everyone remembers that DeFi project, got rewarded after the fact for being active participants. And I think there could be something there for governance, where if you're an active governor of one of these networks participating in it, then you get benefits like being reimbursed for your fees. Drives the right behavior. Love that. Cool. A couple more quick ones before we let you jump. A bunch of people have asked about how we talked a lot about how crypto is going to overtake the traditional financial system, but a lot of people ask about the traditional financial system cooperating with and participating in crypto. Do you have any perspective or angle on if and how banks and other big financial entities will be successful or not successful playing in this space? Do you think it gives rise to a whole new set of institutions that aren't the traditional ones? Or do you think the traditional ones will stick around and succeed and adapt to participate?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so if you think about like what does a bank have that's valuable? I mean, like one is like, which I don't think is really valuable like in like a thousand year sense. It's just valuable in today's unfortunate society. But like they have a regulatory moat. They have like this huge compliance apparatus that they've sort of built up and have kind of like added more regulatory blockers just so other people can't really effectively create banks. So that's one thing they have, which is not like really valuable on like a 1,000-year timeline. And then the other thing they have that's valuable is the customer base. And that's like something that's actually valuable. And they have kind of the customer relationship and that sort of thing. I think some banks will adopt. Like you do have some banks that aren't terrible. Like, banks like Ally Bank, which are kind of entirely digital. Like they're decent. They're not like amazing. It's not like buying an Apple product, but it's also like their customers don't hate them. Versus like if you talk to like Wells Fargo customers, they actually kind of hate Wells Fargo. And so I think some banks will start to adopt the tech. And it's sort of a thing where if you have a piece of technology that makes the business more efficient, the first person to adopt it can make more money because it will increase their margins. Ally can do something where they adopt some piece of crypto. They make things, either like 30% more beneficial for their users or drop the cost for the users 30%, and Ally still makes more money. And now every other bank is going to have to eventually adopt whatever piece of technology they got comfortable adopting, or they're going to be uncompetitive. Their shareholders will actually pressure them to adopt it. I used to think that this was like incredibly unlikely and that all the banks would kind of just like skate by and then eventually they'd wake up one day and be disrupted like the newspapers were. But actually, like this week, there's a great thing published by like the American Banking Association or something like that, where it's like a 20-page paper where they're like, here's all the parts of DeFi that banks could integrate and like we're a representative for the banking industry, and like we think you should actually start to integrate some of this stuff, which is very surprising to me. I still think a lot of them are going to get disrupted, but there will be some that adopt pieces of the tech, in my opinion, versus 3 years ago I thought they wouldn't.
That makes a lot of sense, and something you said there is interesting, which is as people adopt this, it forces other banks. It reduces their take rate basically, and forces other banks to do the same to compete. And I think that's one of the challenges that is underrated for banks in adopting this technology. It's not just that adopting the technology is hard and uncertain. It's also that in some sense it runs against their economic incentives. They need to kind of cannibalize their old business model at some level in order to adopt this. And some of them will, but it makes it harder. They're kind of starting from further behind the starting line than they could be, because they have to sacrifice some of the fees and things that they otherwise would have taken in order to adopt this technology, make use of it effectively. So that makes a lot of sense. Joey, there's a million more questions, but we should let you go. I learn a ton every time I talk to you. I really appreciate the time. I know the community does too. I'm sure they'll be tweeting you and thanking you and trying to find your Discord handle and say thanks. But thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your support as always. We'll let you go, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Joey.
All right. Bye.
Amazing. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Joey is brilliant, and we are incredibly fortunate to have him as a co-founder at Eco and have his insights as a part of what we're doing. I know there's a ton more questions. We'll do another one of those, I promise. But feel free to keep posting them in the chat, and maybe we'll do a follow-up session at some point with Joey. And I know there were a lot of questions unanswered, but we had limited time, so we will get to them. In the meantime, I wanted to give a preview of what we're going to talk about tomorrow at the Eco Explore event. And then I think I can probably make a little more time after to answer a few more questions from folks specifically about Eco. I've reserved most of the Eco-specific questions to focus on things that Joey would be best to opine on more broadly from an educational perspective. But I'll talk you through a little bit on what we'll be discussing tomorrow with the broader Eco community, and then I'll take some questions. So just some context. Eco Explore 1 is Eco's first broad public community virtual event. Our most passionate and loyal supporters are you all in our Discord community. But there is a broader community around Eco. There are people who are not as crypto savvy, who we don't give the secret password into the Discord. And this event tomorrow is really in a large part for those people, for people that are using the Eco app, who are not crypto savvy, who don't have the same depth of knowledge as you all do. And so we'll be talking a little bit more broadly, but because our most passionate and loyal supporters are you all, we know it's really important to make sure that you understand what we're doing and understand what we're going to say and have some early insight into what we're talking about, because as we always say, our earliest users win with us. And so core to Eco's strategy is building this consumer product that can serve everyone, not just people who are crypto savvy. And so it's important for you to understand how we're doing that and how we can use this Eco product to shift people over to this crypto universe. This actually goes right in with what Joey was talking about a little bit, that one of the beauties of Eco is that it onboards people to crypto without them even necessarily needing to know that it's crypto, and without us ever really talking about crypto. And that's the way to get to the future here. And that, in my opinion, is the holy grail of crypto, that we can build a product that everyone can use without knowing what's happening behind the scenes. And that's what onboards the world to this space and makes us all successful. So tomorrow, this first Eco Explore event and the subsequent editions of the program will be about talking about these big ideas that drive Eco, our vision for this smart money future, which we'll talk about in a moment, and showcasing product features and benefits that come from those. So I've got some notes here. I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of a preview of what we're talking about. And one more thought on all of that is that, just as it's important for us to, I'm in the Discord all the time, obviously, Dave and Henry and everyone are in there all the time. You all hear from us a lot. And the broader Eco community doesn't hear from us as often. And so we think it's important to have this regular event. It'll happen about every 3 or 4 months. And we'll keep everyone updated on what we're working on to put their money back to work for them. It'll be about sharing knowledge from top experts in finance, crypto, consumer products, and getting feedback from people. And it goes without saying, I'll mention this again at the end, but You all should still come tomorrow. It'll be great. It's at 5 p.m. UTC, probably around about 2.5 hours. And if you haven't registered already, eco.com/explore. But for now, I'll give you a quick preview. One of the foundational things that we're going to talk about is how, at its heart, eco is a community. So this topic about you and even our broader community is going to be a major theme tomorrow. And in fact, if you tune in right at the beginning, 5 p.m. UTC, we'll show a pretty great video we made with a mashup of some of the amazing content you all have produced in Discord. Without telling anyone about the Discord existing, we made this great video that we're going to show off because we're incredibly proud of all the things that you have done. And so we want to showcase that intensity and passion that you and others have shown for eco, and this shared belief that our current financial system is failing us and that there's a better way. There's something better we can do. And we want the audience to appreciate, this broader audience, how strongly we believe that for eco to succeed, we have to bootstrap belief from a growing community of early adopters all the way through to the mainstream. This is a really foundational concept, that we are creating something that is a movement, that is a crazy big idea. And in order for it to succeed, belief needs to be bootstrapped. It needs to start from the earliest adopters, the crypto people, the people who are really willing to believe and see into the future. And then those people can bring it to the rest of the world. Because the reality is that most people don't understand how broken the financial system is. They don't understand how powerful crypto is. They're not there yet. And this belief needs to start with the people that do understand. So I would argue that you all in Discord, if you're there, it means you understand these things. It means you understand that your money's not really working for you in the traditional financial system. It means that you understand that crypto is powerful technology. And that belief that you have in those concepts, and also in eco itself, is necessary to bootstrap that for other people. Other people, the mainstream, will not believe if there's not already a community of people who do believe, who are ahead of the times and understand what's happening in the future and can see around corners. And so we really believe that at its heart, eco is a community. And a lot of companies these days talk about community, but they don't really mean it. It's become a little bit of a cliche, this buzzword that, communities are what matter. But most companies don't treat their communities like communities, they treat them like customers. And that's fine for some companies. I don't necessarily want to be a member of a community of every, company I frequent. I don't really care to be a member of the local coffee shop's community. But sometimes community really does matter. For something like eco, where belief is so important because we're making these foundational statements and creating this movement around these new ideas, community matters. And we believe that at its heart, eco is a community and nothing matters more than that. I gave a talk, I think many of you saw it, a guest appearance on Rob and Josh's Trust But Verify YouTube show, which, by the way, if you're not already subscribed, go to the Trust But Verify YouTube channel and keep your eyes peeled. You should absolutely subscribe to that. But I talked a lot about this, about how community is what matters. And I talked about it in a very different context then. But at the end of the day, that's just a key belief for us. It really matters. And our number one goal, I'll be talking about this tomorrow, and the broader community of eco, the broader audience of eco, will hear this for the first time really, that our number one goal is maximizing the wealth of the eco community. It's really simple. Eco's number one goal is maximizing the wealth of the eco community. I don't know a lot of other companies that say that their number one goal is maximizing the wealth of their community. Because it's not true. It's definitely not true of banks. The big banks are not focused on maximizing your wealth. And so for us, that's an important thing to say, an important thing to commit to publicly. So much of how belief happens is the result of public commitments being delivered on. So we're going to go out to the world tomorrow and we'll say, that's our goal. And people need to hold us accountable for that. And we need to maximize the wealth of the community and give you back control over your money. That's the second piece. And you all understand this. You've understood how the financial system's broken and control over your money matters. And we need to tell the broader world about that idea. And so in order to make that a little bit more concrete, we need to show that audience tomorrow how we intend to reimagine the entire financial system, how to make it work for you. And that goes into this commitment that we're going to make about building a bridge to a financial future, what we call our smart money promise. We talked about this a little bit in our recent fundraising announcement and blog post. We love this idea of smart money, that the existing financial system is a dumb money system. It is not working for you. And a smart money system is a vision for a new financial future where it changes a few fundamental things. It changes infrastructure, it changes alignment, and it changes product. And so ECO's smart money promise consists of a few things. First, leveraging new technological infrastructure. I think a lot of you know what that technological infrastructure is, to enable direct transactions and cut out middlemen. Second, fully aligning our business model with the customer, making money together instead of at their expense. And third, on the product front, building something that meets you where you are, which in our view is a single unified digital wallet for doing everything with your money. So when people hear smart money, we want them to think better infrastructure, better alignment, and better products. There's three things: infrastructure, alignment, and products. We're going to talk about that to the community tomorrow. How we're using better infrastructure to enable direct transactions with no middlemen, better alignment, where we only see upside when they do, and better product, where we're building something that meets you where you are, a single unified digital wallet for everything in your financial life. And then we're going to talk about that roadmap, that idea of the single digital wallet, tying that promise to deliver a smart money future to this vision of this all-encompassing wallet, allowing people to consolidate their whole financial life in one place. And what's so important here is that we need people to get a visceral sense of the personal financial opportunity cost represented by having many different financial accounts, a checking account, a savings account, credit cards, investing, crypto apps, everything. When they're separate, it's not just an inconvenience. It actually has real effects on your finances because you don't realize how much money you have in all these different places. If you've got a credit card and a few different accounts, at any given time, you don't know exactly what you have. And your money's certainly not working for you. And it drives us to spend in unwanted ways and derails our best intentions to save. And so this roadmap of a single digital wallet for your entire financial life is a big thing we're going to talk about tomorrow to the community, and how that is going to make your life better and put your money back to work for you. And this smart money future is, we think, unlike anything people have seen before. And we need to prime people to kind of expect constant progress, step by step, delivered feature by feature, quarter by quarter, with no endpoint. And we'll talk a little bit about this concept that you all hear, but our broader community hasn't heard yet, which is blowing minds one step at a time, which is our commitment to making each incremental improvement to the product awesome and rewarding in and of itself, surprising people and also speaking to them at their level and bringing them along the journey with us. And so in a little bit of an alpha leak, we'll have a few announcements tomorrow about features coming up for the ECO app, for those eligible to use the ECO app, which I know is not all of you, but it's relevant for hearing what's going to go down tomorrow. Two big features that we'll be announcing to launch in the next couple months. And both of these are helping us make big strides towards our vision of this single unified wallet for your entire financial life. First, ECO Bill Pay. So the ECO Bill Pay product will allow you to pay virtually any bill, ranging from your cell phone to your monthly rent payment and anything in between. And this is one of our most requested features. We've been running a beta test for just rent payments for some users, but expanding this into a full-blown feature where you can pay any bill from your ECO app, a single place for your whole financial life. It fits really nicely into that concept. And this is demanded from people. And of course, people earn ECO points in the app for doing so. That's one massive feature we'll announce. That'll launch in October. And then second, we'll announce perhaps an even bigger feature, or at least on par with that one, the ECO Card, which will allow you to spend anywhere credit or debit cards are accepted. And that is another one of our most requested features. And between ECO Bill Pay and the ECO Card, ECO users will be able to pay for pretty much anything, anywhere they want. And that's really exciting for us. Bill Pay is going to launch in October. The ECO Card will follow in November. Our team has been working overtime to make those happen. We've been spending so much time working with partners. We found amazing partners to help ship them. But really, the ECO team has just been working day in and day out to deliver those for our users. And so those are the two big features that we'll announce tomorrow. Please don't go tweeting about those. Those are secret until tomorrow, a special preview for the Discord community. There will also be another special announcement. For a limited time, eligible people, so those in the US states that are eligible to use the Eco app and who have iPhones can skip the waitlist and join the app directly. No onboarding session needed. They can just join right in. This will not exist for a long time. It'll be a very brief window of time when you can do it, and we'll open and close that window over time. But we think the interaction with our users is really important, but we also want to let more people use Eco. And so balancing those two considerations is critical, and we've spent a lot of time building a really great experience for people joining the app immediately and skipping the wait list. So if you've wanted access to Eco and you're in our service area and have an iPhone, but you haven't managed to schedule an onboarding session yet, starting tomorrow will be your time, but please don't tell anyone. That's what we'll be talking about. The smart money promise, this idea of this broken, dumb money system, and everything in between, and then talking about Eco Bill Pay, the Eco Card, and this limited time ability to skip the waitlist and join the app immediately. There'll be a couple other things, so I'll give that keynote at the top of it, talking about all of those pieces. Then there'll be a fireside chat with Ariana Simpson, who's a general partner at Andreessen Horowitz in their crypto fund, a close friend, an amazing person who helped lead Andreessen's investment in Eco earlier this year. And so we'll be getting her wide-ranging perspective on crypto. Probably a little bit more crypto one-on-one than many of you need, but it's meant for a broader audience to educate them on crypto. And then there'll be a talk and Q&A with Brian Brooks, who's the former acting U.S. controller of the currency, former chief legal officer at Coinbase, talking about all things banking and regulation and where that space is going. We'll showcase those upcoming product releases. We'll make that special announcement about being able to skip the waitlist and onboard to the app. And then there'll be a Q&A session for the broader community where they can ask me questions about Eco, where we're heading, and I will give some closing remarks. It's just a small step tomorrow towards bigger and bolder editions of Eco Explore. We want to get this first one out to get into a cadence because we think it's important to get regular about interacting with our broader community, not just you all, because your belief is going to lead to their belief, and their belief is what's going to make us all successful together. We need everyone to believe. If you haven't signed up yet for the event tomorrow, you still have time. Go to eco.com/explore, fill out your details, expect to receive an email with a personalized invitation link about an hour before the event kicks off. Again, 5 p.m. UTC. We hope to see you tomorrow. We'll also make the session of videos available for everyone who can't attend. I know time zones can be challenging sometimes. We did today's event a little bit earlier to accommodate a broad international community for tomorrow's event, which is going to be a lot of non-crypto US users. We made it a little bit later in the day to accommodate their schedules. And the last thing I'll say here is that as a member of our Discord community, rest assured, you'll continue to receive privileged first looks at everything we're planning at Eco. Our earliest users win with us. We're deeply appreciative of your support, and I'd ask you to keep your eyes peeled. That's what I've got for now, but I will stick around a little bit, and I can answer some questions. I know there have been a ton of questions posted. I'll move my next meeting and sit around for maybe 15 minutes here and answer some questions, because I know we missed a lot of them during the Q&A section with Joey, and then we will turn this off. So let me pull up Discord here and take a look at these questions. You all sent a lot of messages during this event, which is awesome. But I'm going to try and find some questions here. Let me pull these up. Let's see. Feel free to keep posting more too if you have more questions, especially after that preview. All right. Let's see. I see one question. I'm just scrolling through here quickly. I know I'm still going to miss a ton. There's so many questions here, but I'm around on Discord. I can answer questions later as well. Someone asked, what solutions, Dimitro asked, what solutions will be offered for developers who want to develop add-ons to the Eco project? Really interesting. If we're going to talk about our community mattering a lot, shouldn't we also let other people extend and build upon Eco in different ways? The answer is absolutely. First of all, there's already things happening. There's amazing bots and products and everything being built by some of the crazy infrastructure engineers in the Eco Discord channel. So if you're interested in that and you want to build things, ping us and we'd love to loop you into those efforts. All sorts of things happening within Discord. We'll also, over time, be offering more and more opportunities to build out of Discord and build things for the broader Eco community. We're not there quite yet. A lot of the development still has to be internal and things that we're working on ourselves to lay that foundation. But we will get there, and we will definitely want your help doing so. So keep your eyes peeled. Laz asks, is Eco in competition with fintechs like Revolut, or is it not intended to be a bank account? Well, Eco is not a bank, but in many senses, it replaces a bank. And so, yeah, we want to be the primary account for people's money. We want to be a single digital wallet for saving, spending, sending, making money all in one place. And yeah, fintechs like Revolut do a lot of similar things. And we think we can be better because of this smart money feature, a better product built on better infrastructure with better alignment. But certainly we are competing for dollars. And so there is some competition there. I also think there are ways that we can collaborate with those firms to offer this better future to more and more people. And so competition, collaboration, sometimes two sides of the same coin, but in some sense, there are certainly things we will need to do there. Let's see. PPAC DAO, I don't know if I'm pronouncing these names correctly, but I'll give it a shot. Is there any plan for other countries? We are working on it. Absolutely, we hear you loud and clear. It's extremely hard to launch regulated, compliant fintech products in different places. It'd be much easier if we were launching some simple social product that didn't interact with money whatsoever to launch it everywhere, and we would have done so already. But because we deal with money, we got to be compliant. We got to do the right thing by regulation. It's challenging. It's hard. I'll be honest. It's not trivial to do that, and to deal with all the challenges that come with it, different currencies, legalization, everything. We're working on it. Eco needs to be for everyone, just fundamentally. It can't be a U.S. service forever. It doesn't make any sense. And participation in the Eco Discord matters too. And even this research purpose only point system matters. And so we're trying to make Eco available everywhere in one form or another as fast as we possibly can. Absolutely. Let's see. Ricky Bobby asks, what's the roadmap look like? Can you briefly talk about this? What's the ETA on the debit card? You just heard about it. That question was asked before I said that, but Ricky Bobby says, I eagerly want to transfer all my money to my Eco account, but I can't so far because the only product I use is Amazon, which is a small percentage of my spending. Yes, we hear you loud and clear. That's why Eco Bill Pay and the Eco Card product are coming in the coming months. Bill Pay in October, card product in November. I think those make a big difference for a lot of Eco users. Let's see. Finding more questions here. A lot of questions about different chains. Ethereum, some of you may have seen a job posting on our website for Ethereum engineers. Sorry if you hear some background noise, by the way. Some of you may have seen a job posting on our website for Ethereum engineers. And I think what Joey said during our talk is actually really relevant, that Ethereum is a really compelling place to build products right now because of the network effects. And these network effects matter, and the existence of other infrastructure built on top of Ethereum makes a big difference. And so right now, Ethereum makes a lot of sense for us. There's no telling what the future could hold, though. And I don't want to make any guarantees about that. And I have lived and seen the upsides of different projects. In my former job, founded CoinList. We ran token sales for a lot of great layer one projects. And so I'm very familiar with the upsides of those. And I think that in certain scenarios, I can easily imagine Eco leveraging other chains. So definitely keep your eyes peeled on that. I know I keep saying it. Do we have plans to expand the list of supported merchants? Absolutely, but also in the interim, the Eco card coming up will make that much easier to spend anywhere, not just at Eco supported merchants. That was a question from Astronaut 991. Let's see. Slava asks, what should happen to Eco for you to be happy? I would like Eco to put everyone's money back to work for them in the entire world. That's what we're going for. We think the existing financial system is broken. We think money does not work for you. And we think we can build something better that puts your money back to work for you. And I will not be truly happy until we do that for everyone in the entire world. So that is what we are working towards. Find more questions. Got I'm scrolling through a lot of KYEP comments here. CZABY asks, I know the Eco project is against traditional finance, but when Eco becomes popular, I'm pretty sure the original banks will try to cooperate with Eco to survive. if these kind of situation occurs, will ECO cooperate with the banks? It really depends. We're open to it. We're not seeking it. And I think people would have to come into that with really strong, positive intentions. If a bank is willing to do what they have to do, to the point of the conversation with Joey earlier, is at some level cannibalize their business model to work with us, we're open to it. And we think that, as Joey said, banks have these amazing network effects. They have these big customer bases. And if that helps us reach a broader audience faster, put more people's money back to work for them, bring more people into the fold, into this belief, then we'd be open to it. But otherwise, if they're just going to try to use the system for their own gain and continue doing what banks have always done, it's not interesting for us. And so it's all about the intentions and making sure that in the same way we are aligned with our customers, any partners we have are aligned with us. And that matters more to us than anything. We're building for the long term here, not for the short term. And that makes a big difference. Let's see what else we got. Andre512 asks, which of the colors in the ECO logo do you like the most? I think I like the blue. I'm a big fan of the blue. I think that's my favorite ECO logo color. Let's see. Katsuyama asks, expectations are getting higher and higher for ECO. Does this give the team some stress? How do you handle this? And most importantly, can you meet the expectations? I know we can meet the expectations. It is hard. It is stressful sometimes. The ECO team will certainly tell you that. We're trying to do something really big here. It's ambitious. We're trying to put everyone's money back to work for them. And that's not a small task. And that leads to stress. It does. But we're motivated by knowing that we're doing the right thing for the world, the right thing for you all, the right thing for our broader community. And that keeps us going through the stress. So I know we can deliver on the expectations. It is sometimes stressful, but that does not stop us from achieving what we want to achieve. Let's see. Cool Cho Man asks a bunch of questions. Will you be able to send money? When will you be able to send money to other ECO users? We don't have a timeline for that yet, but of course, sending, as I keep saying, is a core feature of something we want to enable. So sending money is definitely part of your financial life, something we're working on. No timeline for that one quite yet, but you all will be the first to hear about it when we do have one, for sure. How do you provide assurances to users who want to hold a large balance? We talk to them. We talk them through our security procedures and everything that we do to make sure your money is safe. And it does not stop people. We are extremely diligent about how we work with people who hold large balances and deposit large amounts to the ECO app, and we have people do it all the time. So we are really careful about that. And what are the rewards for bill pay and credit card spend? Great question. I'll give you a little bit more of an alpha leap. We weren't going to say this, but because you asked, we aren't announcing the credit card one yet because we don't know yet. That's not launching until November, so we want to see how things develop a little bit before then. For bill pay, you will get 2 points for every $5 spent on a bill. So for every $5 spent on a bill, you'll get 2 points. For the first time ever, you're getting rewarded for paying your bills, which is a radical concept. There are services out there that let you pay your bills electronically, but they charge you money. And ECO's different. ECO's rewarding you for paying your bills. We do not charge anything for the bill pay service. Of course not. That's not how we operate. And so for the first time, offering a rewarding bill pay experience, which is not something people have seen before. Let's see. What else do we have here? I know I missed a ton. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to scroll through this list, and there are a lot of questions here. Seth asks, how would you remap the entire financial system of the U.S. if you had the power to? It's a very good question and a very big question that probably deserves several hours of thinking and then a couple hours of talking about it. I think for me, the analogy I always think about is cash. I think physical cash is a very compelling way to use money. It's, if I hand you a $5 bill, it's a direct transaction with no middleman. No one takes a fee out of cash. It doesn't happen. You just pay the person. It's instantaneous, just hand to hand right there. It's provable ownership. You own the bill. whoever has the bill owns it. And that's a very compelling way to interact with money. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's how money has worked forever, basically. And it has downsides, obviously. First of all, for physical cash, you have to be physically in the same place to make a transaction. So you can't make transactions over distance with cash. And second, there's theft concerns or security concerns that because the cash is a bearer asset, because whoever owns the bill has the money, theft can be an issue, security can be an issue. And so for me, remapping the entire financial system of the US would be about applying the best ideas from cash and fixing the shortcomings of cash, which the traditional financial system has kind of fixed. It does allow transactions over distance, and it does create these kind of security guarantees where you're not always holding all of your money, you're not always storing it under your mattress. And so if we could fix both of those things, if we could allow direct financial transactions with no middlemen and no fees, we could allow people to transact instantaneously, but we could also let them transact over distance and have security guarantees and know that their money is safe. That would be the best possible solution, and that's the future that ECO is working towards there. So, I guess the simplest answer, Seth, is to how I would remap the entire financial system of the US is have it be powered by ECO and our foundational ideas and philosophy and the things that we want to build to make money better and put your money back to work for you. Let's see what else we have here, if anything. Just scrolling through. All right, another question from ZZABY. I agree that ECO will bring a lot of new crypto users online, but a lot of people entering the crypto market face problems, such as learning how to send crypto assets and so on. How can ECO make it easier? By abstracting away a lot of the details. I think that's one of the key insights here. Someone can use the ECO app without knowing that there's any crypto behind the scenes. And this is not a crazy concept. It seems crazy for crypto because every crypto product makes the technical details really obvious to you in a way that it really shouldn't. But if you think about this is the example I always think about. Take a stock trading app like Robinhood or any stock trading app. They don't tell you about the details of what's actually happening behind the scenes. Initiating a FedWire transaction or ACH transaction. Then when you buy a stock, it's actually stored at this place in the US called the DTCC. And the stock is stored in your name at this other place. But Robinhood doesn't tell you all of that stuff explicitly or in your face. They just talk about the benefits. They talk about depositing money and buying a stock and getting exposure to a company you believe in. And I believe that crypto should be the same thing. It should be the supporting infrastructure underneath, but the product should surface to users the benefits and the upsides, not the technical details of how money is actually moving. And, as Joey said when we were talking earlier, the first 10 years of crypto were really about developing that infrastructure technology, which is amazing, and we're all incredibly fortunate to be a part of. But we're now entering the deployment phase, where we figure out how to use that infrastructure to build consumer products that actually help people and offer real benefits. And so that's what we need to do, is make the benefits obvious to people, build a really compelling product for people to use, and don't expose the technical underpinnings. So sending crypto is hard. Getting someone who knows nothing about crypto to use MetaMask is hard. And explaining gas fees and all these different pieces, it's hard. So why don't we remove all of that? Why don't we just make it so it just feels like sending money? At the end of the day, what people want to do is they want to send money to a friend, for example. So just let them press a button that sends money to a friend. Why shouldn't it look like Venmo or Cash App or anything like that, even if there is crypto behind the scenes? So I think the answer to that question, which is a really good one, is hide the crypto. If people want to learn about it, tell them about it, give them answers about it, but don't necessarily put it front and center because that's not the thing that people really care about. So that's my answer there. I actually have to jump now. I pushed a call. I've extended too long, and now I need to go answer this call. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming to preview day for tomorrow's Eco Explore event. I just really appreciate the support. The whole Eco team appreciates the support. We know you're there. We're working as hard as we can to do everything we can for you. As we said, our number one goal is maximizing the wealth of the Eco community, and we want to do that. And so we're figuring out as many ways as possible to do so. But thanks for the questions. Thanks for listening. I hope to see you at Eco Explore tomorrow. It'll be on a different platform, but go eco.com/explore, register, sign up. You'll get an email about an hour before the event with a personalized link to enter it. It's at 5 p.m. UTC tomorrow. It'll run about 2 hours. And you heard the preview already, but we'll go through it. I've got a whole presentation and a fireside chat with Ariana and Brian, and lots of great content. So I hope to see you there. But as always, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for being a member of this community. Nothing matters more to us. And keep your eyes peeled.